The great secret. For there is nothing covered that will not be revealed. Matthew chapter 10 verse 26. The New Testament, the Church, and Christianity were all the creation of the Calpurnius Piso, pronounced Piso, one family, who were Roman aristocrats. The New Testament and all the characters in it, Jesus, all the Josephs, all the Marys, all the disciples, apostles, Paul and John the Baptist are all fictional. The Pisos created the story and the characters. They tied the story into a specific time and place in history, and they connected it with some peripheral actual people, such as the Herods, Gamaliel, the Roman procurators, etc. But Jesus and everyone involved with him were created, that is, fictional, characters. In the middle of the 1st century of the present era, Rome's aristocracy felt itself confronted with a growing problem. The bluish religion was continuing to grow in numbers, adding ever more proselytes. Blues numbered more than 8 million, and were 10% of the population of the empire and 20% of that portion living east of Rome too. Approximately half or more of the Blues lived outside Palestine, of which many were descended from proselytes, male and female 3. However, Judaism's ethics and morality were incompatible with the hallowed Roman institution of slavery on which the aristocracy fed, lived, and ruled. They feared that Judaism would become the chief religion of the empire. The Roman author, Aelius Seneca, tutor and confidant of Emperor Nero, suggested in a letter to his friend Lucilius, a pseudonym of Lucius Piso, that lighting candles on Sabbaths be prohibited for. Seneca is later quoted by St. Augustine in his City of God 5, although the quotation does not exist in Seneca's extant writings, as charging that the Sabbath customs of that most accursed nation have gained such strength that they have been now received in all lands, the conquered have given laws to the conqueror. The family headed by Seneca's friend, Lucius Piso, was confronted with an allied problem more personal to it. They were the Calpurnius Pisos, who were descended from statesmen and consuls, and from great poets and historians as well. Gaius Lucius Calpurnius Piso, the leader of the family, had married Arria the Younger, from her grandfather's name, Aristobulus. This made Lucius Piso's wife the great-granddaughter of Herod the Great. Repeatedly, religious-minded Judean zealots were staging insurrections against the Herodian rulers of Judea, who were Piso's wife's relations. Piso wished to strengthen his wife's family's control of the Judeans, foundation both for the rapid spread of the religion and for the zealots' refusal to be governed by Rome's puppets. The Pisos mocked, but marveled at, the bluish belief in their holy books. Therefore, they felt a new bluish book would be the ideal method to pacify the Judeans and strengthen their in-laws' control of the country. About the year 60 A.D., Lucius Calpurnius Piso composed Marcus, the first version of the Gospel of Mark, which no longer exists. He was encouraged by his friend Seneca 5a and assisted by his wife's kinsman, young Perseus the poet. Nero's mistress, later his wife, Poppaea, was pro-bluish, and Nero opposed the plan. The result was the Pisonian conspiracy to assassinate Nero, detailed in the historian Tacitus. But this attempt failed when he aborted the plot. Instead, Nero had Piso and Seneca and their fellow conspirators executed by forcing them to commit suicide. He exiled Piso's young son Arius, spelled Arius herein, who appears in Tacitus under several names including Antonius Natalis VI. Nero sent young Piso to Syria as governor. That post also gave him command of the legions controlling Judea. His own history records his service in Judea in the year 65 under the name of Gessius Florus, and in 66 with the pseudonym Cestius Gallus. This Arius Calpurnius Piso deliberately provoked the bluish revolt in 66 so he could destroy the temple in Jerusalem, for the blue were unwilling to accept his father's story and thereby become pacified by it, as was intended 7. However, his 12th legion was caught by the zealots in the pass of Beth Horon and almost lost. Nero's reaction was to exile him instead to Pannonia, to command a legion there, and to send Licinius Mucianus to serve in Syria, and Vespasian to Judea to put down the bluish revolt. Then, in 68, Nero was assassinated by his own slave Epaphroditus VIII, who unknown to his master was young Piso's lackey. Galba became emperor and named Piso's cousin, Licinius Piso IX, as his intended successor, but Galba in turn was soon overthrown by Otho. Otho was then overthrown by Vitellius, at which point Piso and his friends began to flock together against the latter. The Pisos and Vespasian and Mucianus and Tiberius Alexander, Philo's nephew, all joined ranks behind Vespasian to seek to overthrow Vitellius X. Arrius Calpurnius Piso was still commanding the 7th Legion in Pannonia 11, Austria-Hungary, and Vespasian sent him, now appearing in Tacitus with the name Marcus Antonius Primus 12, south across the Alps to overthrow Vitellius. Meanwhile, the main body of Vespasian's legions marched overland under Mucianus from the east towards Rome. Piso succeeded in defeating Vitellius' army and secured Rome for Vespasian 13:13. Mucianus arrived and promptly sent him to Judea to help Titus at the siege of Jerusalem. He did so, and in 70 they assaulted the city, then the temple, burned it, slaughtered many thousands, sent thousands more to slavery and gladiatorial combat and unalived. Then, Arrius Calpurnius Piso wrote, in sequence, the following. Gospel of Matthew 70 to 75 CE. Present Gospel of Mark 75 to 80 CE. Gospel of Luke, with help of Pliny the Younger, 85 to 90 CE. In the Gospel story he inserted himself by playing the role not only of Jesus, but of all the Josephs as well. He particularly enjoyed assuming the identity of Joseph. Wishing to create a bluish hero, a savior, in fictional form, he, and his father before him, felt the identity of a second Joseph secretly, but very aptly, fit them. For their name Piso had the same 4-letter rearranged as the 4 Hebrew letters, Yud, Vav, Samek, Fe, which in that language spelled the name Joseph. Thus they saw themselves as the new Joseph. That is why so much of the story of Joseph in Egypt is secretly redone and inserted into the gospel story of Jesus. The bluish of Genesis, 12 brothers. The second Joseph, Jesus, 12 disciples. Joseph spices on the camels. Jesus spices with the Magi. Joseph flees without his cloak from Potiphar's wife, Jesus. The young disciple flees without his cloak when Jesus is arrested. Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus is sold for 30 pieces of silver. Joseph's brother Judah suggests the sale. Judas sells Jesus Joseph. Background was Egypt. Bondage and slaying of the firstborn Miriam is sister of Moses, whose story is sequel to that of Joseph. Jesus' background was flight to Egypt to avoid Herod's slaying of the male children. Matthew chapter 2 verse 13 and 16. Joseph Miriam is sister of Moses, whose story is sequel to that of Joseph. Jesus Miriam is Jesus' mother. Red Pill